If you're interested in what I look like in real life and want to learn more about me, then follow my Instagram page at Joe the Insomniac. A few weeks ago, I had to fly out to a small town I'd never been to before in order to look for a place to live. My boyfriend flew with me, and before the trip, I researched all sorts of apartments on Craigslist and set up a bunch of appointments. Our first appointment was in the afternoon in this sort of remote residential area. Now the landlord had actually filed over some information for us. Now he said to call him an hour before the appointment to confirm I'm coming. I did. He didn't answer. So my boyfriend and I started walking up to the home and just hoped that he would show up. Maybe 10 minutes before the appointment, he called me. "You coming?" he said, sounding like an older man, having this very strange, slow way of talking. But I just thought he was older, and did so because, yeah, we're at the house now, coming up to the front. He gets extremely upset. We? Oh yeah, I have my boyfriend with me. You never told me you had a boyfriend. You never said that. Now it had never crossed my mind to tell him this information, since my boyfriend would not be coming to live with me. He was just helping me while looking for apartments. I told the man so. After a very long pause, he said, "I'm sorry. It's just, sometimes people don't tell me when they're married, and it surprises me. I'll see you very soon." Then he hung up. Now I told my boyfriend about what the man had said. He was immediately weirded out. He wanted to leave, but in honesty, there were very slim pickings in terms of real estate at this point, so I stupidly said that we had to stay in case it's a place. As we're discussing it, we see a man leave the house we're gonna view. This man was young and extremely sketchy looking, greasy hair, weird eyes. He took one look at us and ran out of the home to his car and pulled away from the curb with a screech. Okay, so now we're weirded out. But this isn't enough for us to bail yet, nah. And we looked at each other wondering what to do, and the landlord arrives. He's in his 50s, very tall, very strong looking. His eyes are completely blank, empty of warmth or emotion. He slowly walks up to us and says, "I'd shake your hands, but mine are dirty." "From what?" we said. "Work." Followed by silence is his reply. He has a lot of questions about me, completely ignoring my boyfriend. The entire time he stares into my eyes without blinking. What am I going to do school for? What other places am I considering? Is my boyfriend moving here too? I tried to keep my answers as vague as possible. Meanwhile, my boyfriend asks the landlord the same kind of questions, which he refuses to answer. Then he says, "Let me show you the basement," out of nowhere. At this point, I should have noped out of there, but I didn't. I kept on thinking and telling myself that this was an eccentric old man from a small town, and that we're just feeling paranoid. My boyfriend, on the other hand, wanted out of there, but he followed us as the man led us back to the house, away from the street, sort of to this detached part which is a shed. He opens the door, and we see that the stairs leading downstairs go to utter darkness. He flipped the switch at the top of the stairs, and the light doesn't come on. Normally the response for this is, "Oh crap, the light's out," or something like that. But he just said, and slowly walked down into the darkness. Then he stood there without moving in the dark and said, "Aren't you coming down?" "There's nothing to see if the light's out," said my boyfriend. The landlord just stands there for a long time, then slowly walks up the stairs, closes the door to the basement without saying a word. He left us then, but came back, taking us back inside. Weird and increasingly creepy things ensured. He now says that the only exit is the front door, locked automatically. When my boyfriend tried to fiddle with it, he gets really upset and told him to leave it alone. The man kept trying to box us into small rooms, kept reaching his hands into his pockets, only to take them away when he caught us looking. On Craigslist and in person, the man claimed that there was a grad student already living there, but the evidence seemed very low. There were neat piles of generic textbooks on the table, but not other things a 20-something-year-old might read. There was a bowl of fruit on the table, but no other food in the fridge or anything. There was maybe 3 t-shirts in the closet. The supposed grad student wasn't out of town, but the landlord couldn't say what school he went or how long he'd be renting the home for. Finally, the man showed us every single room but one. This one he refuses to open, claiming it's just the attic, and we didn't need to see anything up there. He gave us several reasons when we inquired. It was unfinished. There was furniture up there. It will smell bad. The last one I believed, because it smelled terrible. Now finally we made our excuses and bolted out of there. The man walked us out, pretending to get to his car first, because he needed something. When he thought we turned the corner, he slowly made his way back home. Now we're fixated on the idea that something was terribly wrong here. We found out 3 things later: that he was a pillar of the community, known by a lot of townspeople. There was no evidence of him owning or managing a real estate company as he claimed to on Craigslist, and that he had listed his home address as a real house that we had been touring, but that's also where the grad student lived. Apparently it's known he's weird and to be avoided. It's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to me, and I'm so glad I didn't go there alone.
Me and my girlfriend Kylie decided to buy an apartment together. She was looking on Craigslist and saw a really luxury penthouse apartment for only $300 a month. It was really nice and it looked over the city, had really nice bedding and a big bathtub, just everyone's dream apartment. Kylie calls the man and he said he's happy to show her the apartment, and she said, Me and my boyfriend are on our way. What's weird is the man on the phone was like, "Oh, alright. I didn't know you were having people come with you." Kylie says to me that we should just see what it looks like and just leave. I agreed and wait outside the apartment. It was really rusty looking and had tall grass around it. We looked at the ad and both looked at each other as we saw a greasy looking man come up to us, and he had a white tank top on and tan shorts with a rusty beard and braided hair. Kylie and I were kind of looking at each other in disgust. He pointed his finger at me and said, "You stay downstairs, young man." For me, being from Canada and being young, I have never witnessed anything like this in my life. Now I should say, Kylie's from Australia and she's pretty tough, so if this man had tried anything, she would kick his ass. I waited downstairs and I heard a faint scream coming from the basement. I didn't think much of it, as I thought it was just a kid outside. Then I heard it again and decided to call the police, and told them what was going on. They came after 20 minutes, and Kylie pulls me outside, and says she's not going to get this place at all. I told her about the screams in the basement. The man was arrested and wanted in another state, and the screaming downstairs came from a woman named Stephanie, who was interested in the apartment, which in reality, Kylie said it was a really dirty house, with women's clothing everywhere. I now know to never search stuff on Craigslist again. Me and Kylie now live in a really nice rent-to-own home in Oregon County, and all I have to say is don't always believe what you see on Craigslist.
Back in my younger days, when I was still living with roommates, I had what turned out to be one of the most dangerous encounters of my life. I was looking to move and was about to leave to see a place in the perfect location. Found it on Craigslist at a good price. There were two seemingly professional male roomies. At the last minute, my boyfriend suggests that he goes along because a place is nearby and they'll have to meet at some point anyway. So we get there and I introduce myself, and the one roommate seems a little taken aback by the fact that I have someone with me. I suppose it could be seen as unusual to bring your boyfriend, but oh well. The damage has already been done, I think to myself. If they don't allow me in their room simply because he's with me, I can't deal with it. Now, let's just see the place. The apartment is huge. We're both subtly impressed, until we turn the corner of the living room and see it. A 2-camera setup with a light pointed at the couch. There's a guy sitting on the couch that is introduced as the other roommate. He jumps off the couch and gives my boyfriend the same weird look. I now realise what they're looking at, and it's disappointment. I shot to my boyfriend a quick look of understanding, and we silently decide to continue with the tour, as to not escalate the situation. I casually joke that it's nice they have a camera, so I can videotape myself for auditions. Then they laugh nervously and say, yeah, that's what we were doing. He then brings us over to my room, and is literally showing me a broom closet. You cannot get a single bed in there. I take this opportunity to get out of there by saying, oh, that's not too bad. I have a queen bed. I won't be able to fit. Thank you for the time though. When we get out to the street and walk around the corner, we look at each other in stunned silence.
So this happened a few years ago, and I just recently remembered it. For a little background, I am a 20-year-old female from Germany. When I was 17, I was in a long-distance relationship, and was desperate for some extra cash, because I spent most of my pocket money on train tickets to see my boyfriend. So I put up a babysitting ad on the German equivalent of Craigslist. Soon I got a call, not an hour after putting up the ad. I was greeted by the voice of a man. The conversation started off innocently enough, with him telling me that he had an 8-year-old and needed someone to watch him after school, as both him and his wife were working full time. I expected him to ask me about my experience with kids or something to that effect, but instead he went on to tell me that his son could be a little difficult. I told him I didn't mind, and that I'd find a way to deal with it. Would you hit him if he's being naughty? I was taken aback by this question. I'm very against violence against children. Even spanking is child abuse in my eyes. I told the man that, and that I'd do my best to find a non-violent way to deal with his problems. But what if he was hitting you? Would you hit back? I replied to him with a firm no. At this point I started to feel angry, as it dawned on me that this was obviously a common occurrence for this child to be hit. He kept on throwing scenarios at me and asked if I would discipline his son in that situation, and that his old babysitter apparently frequently spanked him. I eventually told him, as politely as I could, that if a parent chooses to use spanking as a form of punishment, that was either their business, but as a babysitter I had no right to hit a child. He was silent for a while, then asked me if I would bathe his son. I honestly don't remember what my exact response was, but it definitely wasn't yes. He went on explaining that his son was supposed to take a bath every Thursday and that he hated taking baths. He wanted to know how I would make him get in the bathtub and if I would strip him naked. At this point red flags came up. I dodged the question as best I could and said something to the effect of, things like this are a parent's job, not a babysitter's, and that the parent should make him take his baths in the evening after work, but he kept pressing, asking things of an obscene nature, if I'd wrestle his son naked, etc. I just kept saying no until he eventually called me back. I removed my phone number from the ad immediately and told people to contact me via email instead. I also got a new phone number for reasons unrelated to this unsettling phone call. So luckily I never heard from him again. I just hope his son, if he actually had one, which I honestly doubt, is just okay.
When I was 21, I transferred to a college in San Francisco. I checked out a room for rent on Craigslist. It's a really nice 2-bedroom apartment. It's cheap to rent, close to campus, so the ideal spot. The girl who lived there was 29, called Beth. She was tall and wide, and she had jet black hair, wearing pale makeup. She seemed really nice, although a little quiet, but she seemed to like me and agreed to move in. So far, so good. My first night there, we went out for pizza, and that's when I could tell that something was a little bit off with her. Throughout the dinner, she kept telling me how much I looked like Shia LaBeouf. I didn't know what to say, so I shrugged it off with a thanks. I mean, I look nothing like him, so it didn't make any sense to me. When we got back home, she said if I'd seen her room yet. I said no, so she took me there. At first I was kind of hesitant, but agreed. Her walls were covered in posters of Shia LaBeouf. She even had printouts of him everywhere. She owned all his movies. I didn't know what to make of it, nor would I. It was creepy. The whole night, she had been saying how I look like him. It's now obvious to me that she's obsessed with him. A few weeks passed. I never really saw her that much. We didn't spend any time together really. She would come home from work and practically run to her room. She would spend the whole night in there. She had this creepy high-pitched giggle, and I would hear her giggling through the walls at night. I wondered what the hell she could possibly be doing. Occasionally, she would come out for like 2 minutes and would be slurring her words, so I suspected that she's drinking a lot. Sometimes, she wouldn't say anything and just stand in the hallway and watch me in the living room. I would turn and see her and be surprised, saying, "Hello, Beth." Then, there's a long awkward pause, and she'd let out this high-pitched giggle. It was very uncomfortable being around her. She gave me chills. So one night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. because I heard what sounded like the front door being unlocked. I came out of my bedroom and the lights are off, but I could still see Beth standing at the door, face against it. I can now see that she's turning to look back and forth over and over again. Every time she turned the bolt, she muttered my name. Seeing her standing in the dark, mumbling my name really freaks me out. And it doesn't help that she kinda looks like the bigger version of the girl from The Ring. I just quietly go back to my room and try to sleep. So one night, I'm watching Gladiator, and she stumbled out of her room and turned the living room lights on, forcing me to pause the movie, which is really annoying. She then said to me if I want to hear about her ex-boyfriend. It was an uneasy setting, to say the least. Now, 10 minutes into her story, she was so riled up. She began screaming at the top of her lungs about their breakup. I was worried that the neighbours were going to call the police, and she wasn't listening to me when I said to her to lower the volume. Amidst all of the screaming, one thing that really freaked me out, she's in such a fit that she says, "I'll slit his throat." That was a big game changer. Suddenly, I had no idea what this girl is capable of. She was practically a stranger, and everything I had seen became more and more worrying to me, disturbing to say the least. After a few more minutes, she told me thanks for listening and started doing her giggle. I got out of there pretty quick, went to my room to go to sleep. I had a pretty unsettled feeling about being in the home with her. What's worse is that there's no lock on my bedroom door. I pushed the edge of my dresser in front to barricade. Now there's this one time that I wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of my dresser scraping against the floor. Beth was pushing the door open. I turn on my light, shouting at her to stop. I could see through the opening of the door. She was so drunk, having this intense, crazy look in her eyes. I pushed the door closed, yelling at her to go to bed. I could hear her walk back to her room, but I could not fall asleep. The next morning, when I went out the hallway, my heart dropped. I saw one of her steak knives on the floor by my door. I got goosebumps all over. All I could think about was her saying that she would slit that guy's throat. I confronted her about it, and she said she didn't remember trying to push my door open. She said she didn't even remember telling me about her ex. I had enough now. My lease was month to month, so I found a new spot and moved out. About a month after, she contacted me. I was at the movies and my phone was off. When I got out, I turned it on, and to my shock, I received at least 40 text messages in the last 2 hours. They're just insane, from "Hi, how are you?" to "I hate you." It was insane. I didn't respond, and I never heard of her again. I always wondered if I hadn't set my dresser in front of the door, would she have quietly come into my room to murder me?
I am a 25-year-old guy. This happened 4 years ago. It's still unresolved, if you'd like to call it that. This Friday night, I had gotten off work around 5:30 PM and was ready to make plans for the night. I was recently single, and with asking readers not to judge, I had made up for lost time. I had met a few new girls, but most other single girls I knew didn't think my breakup was for real because my girlfriend and I had been together for such a long time. As the type to stay away from clubs, I began exploring online dating. While at home, I started looking at girls near me on POF. For some reason, that night, I really wanted to be in the company of a woman, and the hour I'd spent with no suitable response began to wear my patience down. I eventually looked on Craigslist and posted personal ads. Now, I know Craigslist is not the best place to meet people, but at this point I was thinking with the other head, if you know what I mean. I went out for an hour or two, and when I returned, I noticed that I had some responses to my ad. Mostly spam, obvious escorts and a catfish. I may have been desperate, but I wanted someone I felt comfortable with, on a friend and personal level. After weeding out, I saw one response that looked legit. I could tell she'd read the ad, and it was an actual written response. She even included a few pics, which all of them she looked normal. She was cute, but didn't look like a model from a magazine or anything like that. They just looked like selfies she took herself. In hindsight, there was something about this that I didn't catch at first, which is important to the rest of the story. I use a dummy email for Craigslist, and I've set it up so that pictures don't download automatically. I learned my lesson after posting an ad for a table and getting a dick pic. However, these pics showed up right away as soon as I opened the email. This will tie in later. After some back and forth, I decide I'll come over. She gives me the address and I see that it's an apartment building. Even better, as I'm always thinking of safety. I didn't want to go inside an actual home. I get there and email that I'm outside, and just give me the exact building and apartment number. She tells me to walk outside and walk to the courtyard, so she can make sure that I am who I say I am. Understandable. I said I was 5'11". It would be scary on her end if someone 6'5" was out there. After seeing that it was truly me, she says she has to tell me something. I'm thinking the worst here, and I start to think of what it could be. Then she tells me, "I'm really a man, I'm sorry." Now I'm pissed, but that washes over immediately as I feel played. I'm prepared to take my loss and quickly head back to my car when I got more emails. He tells me to come in, and that he can give me money, or cook, or have drinks or whatever. He sounds like he just really wants a company, but I'm sorry, but I'm just not chilling with some guy. He then sends me the last email that simply says, $200, 2 hours, no touching, no sex. It catches my eyes, and I walk up to his door. Stupid I know, but at this point I'm thinking I'll just take his $200, maybe knock over some of his things for tricking me, and just leave. My better judgment gets the best of me thankfully, and I'm about 5 feet from his door, and I turn around and leave. I decided this was a sign that I needed just to stay at home for the night. I stopped at a 7-Eleven to grab a beer. I get back in my car and start reading through Facebook. All of a sudden I get a Facebook message from someone I didn't know, who I can tell is a fake profile saying, "Sorry, can you please come back?" I get upset of the nerve of this guy, and then the air escapes from my throat. How on earth did he get my personal Facebook? I used a fake email that has no ties whatsoever to my real name. I message him back, "Leave me alone, I apologise but I'm not interested." The man then threatened me by saying something along the lines of, "You should listen," then said my name. Of my job. It was listed on my Facebook, but it was my first ever camp job before college, so it really didn't mean much. I told the man, "Either stop or I'm coming back with some help to make you stop." I didn't get any more messages after that. I deleted the Facebook messages, deleted my email account and went home. 2 days later, I'm on my computer, when again I get a Facebook message from the guy that says, black shirt. I don't even begin to give the time of day to decipher that and delete the message. I block the man. 10 seconds later, I come to the realization that I'm wearing a black v-neck. I look at the window as if I'm suspecting someone to be peering inside, when I remember I'm on the 11th floor of a high-rise building. There's only one way in, and the door has a strong deadbolt lock. Whenever I come in, I quickly close the door and lock the door due to my pets, so I knew there was nobody physically in my place with me. I'm startled, but I brush it off as a scare tactic. I bet like 6 in 10 guys right now are wearing a black t-shirt. The man just seemed like a lonely troll, and I'm sure he was doing this to everyone who felt trapped in his Craigslist scheme. I closed my computer down and went on with my day. 2 days later, I'm sitting back at my computer as usual, when once again the guy messages me. I already know it's going to be some nonsense, so I'm going to do a mark as read / delete thing, so he can't see that I've read it. I see the partial message that says, black and red robe. I literally scoot in my chair back and stare at my computer. Right behind me, I'm sure reflecting in my screen if the light would have hit it correctly, sat aglow with black water and red land. A friend got it from me because it was different. I understood it right away. This man could access my webcam. I then thought back to my original email. He penetrated through my firewall, and he somehow tied my fake email to my real name. I am pretty good with computers, but I'm the first to take note when I'm dealing with someone who is a genius with computers. This man gave off every vibe that he knew what he was doing in the computing world, and maybe even the hacking world. I slam it shut and pace around the room, mumbling to myself that I'd been so careless to get in a position like this. I run to a drawer and scramble for the black electrical tape. I find some and place it over the cam. I am officially freaked out at this point. I'm not a tough guy by any means, and I hold my own in most situations, but I felt out of control. I delete my Facebook and every social media account as well. I spend the next 10 minutes prioritising my online presence and cleaning out my computer. I keep the tape on and try to get on with my week. 2 days later I come home from work around 6 PM. I come in and close the door and greet my pets. I see a white piece of paper that was slid under my door. This usually either meant maintenance had a project going on, or we were late on rent, or the elevators were broken. We got a lot of those elevator letters. I pick it up and place it on the table as I get my dog to stop jumping on me and put my bag down. I pick up the note and it says, blue doormat. To give you some background, during my drunken escapade, my ex and I brought a bright blue doormat that we were both 100% certain was green and would match the green carpet outside our door. We then sobered up the next morning and we realised how off we were and decided to keep it as a joke. This man had been inside my building and at my door. The thing is, it was a big building. You would need to know the building number, address, floor number and apartment number. My dog wasn't going crazy, but I ran into the kitchen and grabbed a knife. I swung the main closet doors open. Nothing. I ran into the bedroom and swung the closet doors open. Once again, nothing. I raced in the bathroom and opened the shower curtain. Nothing. The man had not been inside, but he had been close enough. I'm not the type to call the police, but I felt that I didn't know what to do. After sleeping on it, I called 911 the next day, and asked for a non-emergency. After a hold, I'm connected to a lady and tell her what's going on. She says she can't do anything, but gives me the number of the police of the city where the man lived. I call and speak to an officer, and basically tell him that I'm not trying to press charges or anything, but can someone please go over there and scare him or something. I could tell the cops wanted nothing to do with me, but I kept his ear, probably because he could hear a rational young man basically pleading with him to help. He said he would send someone out there. I get a call a few hours later from the station. The cop I spoke to before says that there was no answer at the door. He told me that he went to speak with the leasing officer and the sales manager, and the only person who lived there was an old lady who had been there forever. I froze for a moment. The guy wasn't even at that apartment when I came there. I started to think, was he in a different apartment? Was he waiting in a car, behind a tree or somewhere in the courtyard? I personally think he was somewhere inside a neighbouring apartment, just watching. However, I had never felt so careless. The cop told me to reactivate my account and just wait for another message. I did that for a month or so before shutting it down for good, before making another one. I just felt more comfortable that way. I never had another encounter, and I've since moved and gotten a new computer. I got the courage to go up to that apartment twice. The first time I didn't get a response when I knocked. The second time I was greeted with an older lady, similar to what the cop had told me. I told her what happened and she assured me she had no sons or nephews or anything like that. She left me with a lecture telling me to be safe. That was 4 years ago. I'm 25 now, and to look back at my 21-year-old self, I would never even consider meeting someone online like that now. Please, if it seems sketchy, it is sketchy.
This happened last year, around this season, while I was broke, struggling to make ends meet. I just moved out and didn't want to resort to going back to my mum and dad's house. Anyway, I was so desperately trying to find anything. I went to Craigslist for caregiver, housekeeping type gigs to make some quick cash. While I was searching for a full-time position, I knew I wasn't going to be there too long. How bad could it be, right? After responding to several, I got a bite back from a man who advertised as being disabled, who needed help with his morning routine and whatnot. Now, I knew it could be difficult for some, and I felt a bit bad. After chatting on the phone and coming to the conclusion he was nice and normal, I proceeded to head over to his town's house late one night to help him with his nighttime routine. He lived a bit out of the way from me, but I was so desperate and didn't mind. He even said to me that I could spend the night there if I needed. Once I got there, I found he was a decent looking man in his late 30s or early 40s with a cane. He paid me $200 up front for the expected nighttime and morning routine the next day. He explained to me that he's ex-military, coming back from surgery recently. Things start to get weird when he offered me some wine, commenting on how cute he thinks I am. Now honestly, I should have seen this as a big red flag, but again, I was super poor and didn't want to cheat him, so I gave him the benefit of doubt. He then led me to his bedroom where he got undressed for his evening shower. I was horrified that he was turned on and wanted me to lather him up. He then said, "Do I want to take my clothes off for him?" I said no. Now after giving him a normal shower, he got out and said he's heading to bed but didn't want to wear any clothes. The guest room where I was to stay was right next to his, and though I was tired, I was very on edge. My gut instinct was telling me to get the hell out of there. The issue was that we're on a 3-story townhouse and on the top floor, and that he had installed baby gates on each floor so his cat couldn't run away. Also, he turned off all the lights on the lower floors, so to get out, I'd have to pass his room. I now quietly arrange my stuff in my purse while I hear his TV blaring, and to my horror, I saw him walk swiftly to his bathroom without his cane. I realize now he's not disabled, since before he said he could not walk without it. As quickly and quietly as I could, I fled and ran like hell out to the room while he's in the bathroom. I now jump like I'm an Olympic sprinter, getting out of there as quick as I can over the cat gates to the dark stairs. Now as I throw open the front door, I hear his house alarm going off. I get into my car as quick as lightning, heart beating like crazy. He then calls me immediately. I sped out of there and was terrified. Who knows what could have happened if I stayed overnight? I'm glad I didn't have to find out.
I am a mobile user, so you know the drill. This may get a bit long. This happened 4 years ago when I was in college. It was around 2 AM at a friend's parents' house, who were very laid back, and that's an understatement. Myself, my cousin, and his girlfriend at the time, Holly, were snoozing in the living room. A phone goes off and wakes up Ted, and I see it's Holly's phone. Holly's in a deep, pot-induced coma, so we ignore it and go back to sleep. The phone continues to ring, so Ted finally answers it. They've never been shy of looking into each other's phones, but don't abuse the privilege. He says hello a few times, before Amal asks for Holly. Ted immediately hung up and got suspicious as to why Amal was calling Holly at 2 AM. He goes through her phone while I'm in the bathroom. While washing my hand, Ted knocks on the door saying, "Hey, we need to take her home, now." So I dry my hands, and he wakes her up, and we all get in my car and drive off to her part of town. Holly keeps asking Ted what's wrong and what's going on. Ted finally blew up about the call. Emails he found in her phone proving she had been prostituting herself on Craigslist again, and that he was done. I'm as quiet as a crypt keeper, as she's bawling her eyes out and losing her shit trying to explain. We wait to get to her house before he can even fully stop the car, and he tells her to get the fuck out and to lose his number. She goes inside in a snotty mess and we leave. When we pull up to his house, we sit inside my car for a while, talking about what just happened, and giving him time to vent, and tell me that this isn't the first time they've dealt with this. Out of nowhere, a black town car pulls up right next to us, and Ted says, "Oh crap." 3 people, 2 men and an older woman get out and surround the car. I can see that the youngster of the 2 men has a firearm. The woman goes to Ted's side, yelling for him to get out of the car and take his ass whooping like a man. I start freaking out, asking who these people are, and the woman starts trying to yank my doors open and punch my windows. Ted says it's Holly's mum, her stepdad and her cousin. When his mum punched the window for the 3rd time, I noticed his cousin laying his hand near his firearm, so flight 1, and I immediately put the car in reverse and drove backwards down the street to get away. I slid into a person's yard. I've since apologised and compensated for the damage. And as we took off, I saw them run into their car and give chase. I had never been so panicked in my life. We were flying down regular roadways at 50 or 60 miles an hour. I'm running red lights, taking last minute turns. I must have burned all the treads off my tyres, because my car skidded a good handful of times. They chased us for 22 minutes, while the whole time I was praying, where the fuck is the cop when you need one? When we got to a quiet neighbourhood I knew well, we turned down a street heavily covered in trees, and Ted said, "Turn your lights off and stay on the brake." I do as I'm told and rolled down the street slowly. I stared into my rearview mirror, and we saw them drive past the road that we were on, very slowly, but thankfully they didn't see us. When we were sure we lost them, I parked and started yelling at Ted, asking why they were chasing us and what was going on. As I'm having my panic attack, his phone rings and it's the mum. He answers and they say they want to meet to talk and get Holly's phone back. In the heat of everything, idiot Ted forgot to give Holly her phone back. I said I'm not meeting them without a cop present, so we tell them to meet at a local gas station that we know cops monitor frequently. When we finally get there, thankfully there was an officer on duty. They arrived 2 minutes after we did, and Ted got out to deal with them, in plain view of the cop, and the camera outside the gas station. I noticed the cousin was not in the car when they pulled up. I couldn't make out everything that was said, but Ted handed her the phone. They talked for about 15 minutes, with her flailing her hands, getting in his face and even pointed at the cop in what looked like she was going to say something to them. When it was over, he got back and we drove off. So when we dropped Holly off, she walked in her house crying. Her family immediately asked what was wrong, and Holly wouldn't say anything, just cried. So in their minds they jumped to conclusions that Ted hit her. She didn't even try and correct them. When he tried to show her mum her ways, she completely swept it under the rug, and tried to make him the reason for it all. I told him he was better off without that crazy, and he dodged a bullet. The next week was spring break, so we took a much needed trip to Colorado. Before I begin the story, I'd just like to say that I live in a big college town, so posting or responding to Craigslist ads looking for roommates is completely normal. This takes place last Thursday night. My best friend Katie was looking for a roommate as she lived with her mum and wanted to move out as soon as possible. She posted an ad on Craigslist looking for a 1-bedroom or a room for rent with roommates. A guy about our age, 22, texted her telling her that he and his girlfriend were about to have a room for rent in their town home as their other roommate was moving out. Excited and surprised at the affordability, Katie agreed to meet him and check the place out. Since she's not an idiot, she brought our good friend Damon with her. They met this guy and neighbours, and Katie decided that she really liked him and the place, but needed to get another opinion. Later that night, Katie called me and asked me if I wanted to go back over there to meet the guy. She told me how cool he was and how much we all had in common. I agreed. I texted my boyfriend, who was at work at the time, to let him know where I'd be just in case. We arrive at the apartment, and I'm instantly drawn to this guy. He had great energy and was all over sweet. His girlfriend worked over the street and came over for a few minutes on her break. She was all very sweet, and I recognised her as one of my friend's sisters. She went back to work, and we continued talking and laughing with the guy and his neighbours. The guy had made a comment about him and his girlfriend, and how they used to be into orgies and things like that. Katie and I, however, are not into such things. We left around 3 AM, and I could go pick up my boyfriend from work. The next night, Katie asked me if I wanted to go back over there and hang out, have a few drinks, and get to know his girlfriend a little better. Once again I agreed. It was just the 4 of us this time, and we were all taking a few shots, and had a couple of mixed drinks. His girlfriend has anxiety like Katie, and ended up having a horrible drunken panic attack. We left shortly after, as it was a bit much to handle, and didn't think much of it. Now, Katie's favourite movie is Harry Potter. They invited us over on Saturday night to have a Harry Potter marathon, and unfortunately, my boyfriend was at work and he couldn't attend. Everything was completely normal up until he put the second movie in. Katie and I were sitting on the floor, and his girlfriend came down to join us for some girl talk and whatnot. Later, he came down to join us. Everything was normal for all of 10 seconds, when he decided to lie across all 3 of us. He started groping Katie, and she started groping me. Katie and I made it clear that this was not okay. Being pinned under the girlfriend, I was not able to get up as she's much bigger than me. She begins to put her hands down my pants and insert her fingers, as I'm trying to get up and telling her to stop. He gets behind his girlfriend and begins to have intercourse with her. Katie and I are trying to stand up, and he finally says, "Oh, you're not comfortable with this?" We tell him that we were never comfortable with this and we need to leave. He lays down next to us and we gather our things, and he begins masturbating. All the while his girlfriend is trying to pull us back down and tackles Katie and begins groping her. We finally break free and run out the house. The next day we filed a police report for sexual assault, and we're still waiting to hear from the detective. The moral of the story is, don't look for roommates on Craigslist, and don't trust people because they seem nice.